Hi there and welcome. It's Jennifer McGuire, and I hope your new year is off to a good start. Now, I'll be honest, I was having trouble getting back into creating after taking some time off for the holidays, so I decided just to sit down and create some fun inked backgrounds to kind of get my creative juices flowing. As I did so, I came up with a trick that I wanted to share with you that works with creating pretty much any inked background. So I'm going to show that to you today. I have several card examples along the way. Now, most of the cards I make are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I have a lot of cardstock pre-cut to that size because it makes it easier. But sometimes I want to ink up that whole piece. And when you kind of tape a piece of cardstock down so that you can ink it for various techniques, you block off some of it, which you have to cut off. So today's tip is to show you how to create an inked background that covers the entire piece where you don't have to block anything off. To do that, I use Glad Press and Seal. This is a great product that's wonderful in the kitchen, but there are many uses in the craft room too. On one side of it, if you press, it creates a seal. So I'm going to use that sticky to hold my paper down as I ink on it. So I flipped it over and I'm pressing one edge down onto my cutting board. I like to work on a cutting board because I can move it around and heat on it and do whatever I want. And then I go ahead and press the other side by folding it under. So now all that is shown up isn't sticky, but once I press it down, it is. So I can press my paper onto it and look at it, stays put, and I don't need any tape covering the edges of my cardstock piece. Now I can ink this or do whatever I want and it will stay put. Now I'm going to do watercolor for my first example. I'm going to show you a few ways to use this. The nice thing is you don't have to worry about warping when you're doing this because the press and seal holds it nice and flat. Just like you could just tape all the edges with maybe some painter's tape, but this is a great way to do it where you can ink up and work all the way to the edges of the paper. A lot of inking techniques for backgrounds, the edges are beautiful because maybe that's where the ink builds up or the paint builds up. So when you cut it off, you lose a lot of that. So here I am just moving some color around, not doing anything fancy here. You can see I can pick up my cutting board and tilt it and the paper will stay put. I can also brush some of the excess color off onto the press and seal and I'm perfectly fine. Now I can heat set this. You don't want to put too much heat on the press and seal because it will kind of warp a little bit, but the paper's just fine. And you can see the paper held onto it all this time and it stayed nice and flat. Now, after I dried this, I decided I wanted to do more color onto it. So notice I can stick it right back on that press and seal. So I can use one piece of press and seal many times. You could also use a smaller piece of press and seal. I got kind of carried away with this one, but you can use a smaller piece. So here you can see I added more color. My edges are nice, and I'm just kind of dabbing away some of the extra color and heat setting it all at once. And my paper stays still and nice and flat, and all of the color goes up right to the edges. So I'm just going to heat set this, and there's one example. So you can use the press and seal to create watercolor backgrounds that go edge to edge. So I wanted to show you a few other inked background techniques that work well with this press and seal. And by the way, you could use other kind of sticky things like maybe some Post-it sheets that are large to hold things down, but this really works well because the press and seal isn't really sticky till you press the paper into it, but then you can easily remove it. Okay, this time I'm using Clarity Stamp Stencil brushes. These are great for creating soft inked backgrounds. I'm using Distress inks here. If I wanted heavier color, I would use an ink blending tool, but for soft colors, these stencil brushes are great. So I'm doing like a soft bit of blue to the bottom here, and then I'm going to put teal in the center and green towards the top. And each time I'm overlapping so that I can easily blend. And you can see how soft of a color you can get using these stencil brushes. Now I went through and kind of built up some more color, added some more vibrant color just so you could see it more in the video, but you are able to create soft backgrounds with these brushes. The reason I use the press and seal in that example is sometimes when I'm creating an ink background like that and I move it around, I get fingerprints on the inked background and I didn't want to mess up that soft background, so then press and seal really helped me out. Now for this example, I put some tape on the edges just to be sure that that press and seal stayed nice and in place because I've used this piece many times. So I placed some cardstock on it, pressed it down, and now I'm placing a stencil on top. So for this example, I'm showing you that you don't have to tape your cardstock and your stencil in place. The press and seal holds everything down while you create the inking on top. So I find the press and seal works really well with a stencil. It's just great for it. So there are many uses. There are other inked background techniques you can use press and seal for, or any other kind of sticky surface to hold your paper in place as you create. Now, I know some people overseas have said it's hard to find press and seal, but I do know that you can order it online, and I will link to some sources below. Okay, so now to turn these into a few different card examples, first I wanted to create a layered heart embellishment. For this, I'm taking some white cardstock and I'm putting it onto a sheet of Stick It double-sided adhesive. This is a very thin adhesive that die cuts beautifully. So I'm placing my cardstock on it, and then I'm going to trim the extra Stick It away from it. Now the release paper that I peel off from the Stick It, I keep all of those pieces because they're great for techniques, which I'll be showing you in future videos. So you see this little release piece of paper here? I'm going to keep that. So you'll see me use it again here in a moment. So these are a set of new dies from Memory Box that create layered hearts. If you've watched my videos in the background, I really like the layered background dies from Memory Box. Well, now they have some in this heart shape. So the price point is a little bit better, and you can use the hearts separately or together. So I'm die cutting all 3 hearts at the same time from that white cardstock that has the Stick It already on the back. So now I have these 3 die cuts, and I can glue them all on top of each other really easily because the Stick It adhesive is already on the back. Now this is that release paper. What I do is I put it on top of it so I can really press that Stick It together. The reason you want to press Stick It together is that's what holds it together. The adhesive isn't strong until you press it together. And the release paper makes sure that if there's anything sticky showing, you're not sticking it to your background surface. So now I'm going to put one of these cards together so you can see what steps I followed. Now I originally thought I was going to use this entire background piece on a card so that it went edge to edge on a card front. However, I did decide to trim it up, but it was nice to be able to have that option of having that pattern go right up to the edge. So I did follow a sketch for this card, and it is a sketch from the Fusion Card Challenge blog, which I'll link to below. It has lots of great inspiration. My friend Michelle Lupton asked me if I would participate in this, so I will be sure to link to the blog and to Michelle Lupton's blog, so be sure to check those out below. So the technique that you saw me do here, where I'm cutting around the heart, I wanted that pink to show through behind the entire heart, even though it's hanging off the edge of that pink cardstock. So that's why I did that little trick there. And now we have a piece that looks nice on the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding note card. And by the way, I am going to start linking to all the cardstocks I use, the particular colors I use, and the envelopes I use. So be sure to check those out below or over on my blog. I'm going to try this New Year's to stick with that so you can be sure what exact colors I used. I know a lot of people are interested in that. So I went ahead and adhered a piece of white craft foam that's got a little dimension to it behind this piece so that when I glue it onto the front of my card, it has a little bit of dimension and it'll go through the mail nicely. For a finished edge, I cut a very thin strip of white cardstock that has that Stick It adhesive on the back. I'm just going to glue that along the edge of that cardstock. I have 2 sentiments that I'm using from this All Too New stamp set. One says, "You make my heart bloom," and that is what I'm going to white heat emboss on a black cardstock strip and add to the front of all the cards that I'm making today. I thought that sentiment went nicely with the embellishment we just created. I also die cut a small heart from that same colored cardstock in the background. And this is going to be like a visual anchor to hold my cardstock strip onto the front of my card. Just visually, it's not actually holding it there. That heart was cut from that die background that you see there to the left, which I'll show you later in this video. After I've trimmed off the edges of my little strip here, I'm putting a piece of thin craft foam tape behind the strip. This is a thin craft foam tape from Stampin' Up. I really like this tape. I think it's great because it is nice and thin, has great dimension, works good behind these little sentiment strips and also around shaker windows. So I'm covering the heart with some clear Nuvo drops, and then I'm just sprinkling on little pinches of glitter onto it. These are also from Nuvo, these little glitters here. Just putting a tiny bit on that heart, not to completely cover it, but just to add a little bit of shine to it, and I'll set that aside to dry also. Okay, now I did also add a sentiment on the inside. Remember, I pulled out 2 sentiments from that All Too New stamp set. The second one I'm going to stamp on the inside, but I was afraid I wouldn't stamp it straight. So I put my T-ruler down first, just line it up with the edge, and then I can just stamp right up against the edge of my T-ruler, and I can be sure this sentiment will be straight. I use that same candied apple red distress ink that I used on the front, on the inside of the card, so that it would match nicely. So this card design is great for any inked background that you may want to create, and also for any die cut shape that you want to. You don't have to use a heart there. Now with the watercolor background that I showed you earlier, I did a very similar design, followed the same process, but I did trim the background down a little bit. While I had my supplies out, I decided to create a couple more cards using some new layered background dies from Memory Box. So you can see that I use some of the same products here. Now this card features that background that I showed you earlier that I created with the brushes. So I just put some white layered die cut pieces on top of it. I also created this card here. I'm going to show you these background dies. In one of my favorite crafty things video, I talked about how much I like the Memory Box layered background dies. I did mention that these do have a pretty high price point because you're getting 3 full background dies in the set. But this new one that has hearts is my new favorite because the 3 background dies can really be used separately or together. They're great background dies, and they cut some really great heart shapes that you could use on cards too. So these are the 3 backgrounds, and I wanted to show you how when you layer them together, you get a beautiful look. You could do white on white, which I showed you in that last example, or you can change the colors as I did with this one. Here you can see all the different size hearts that these backgrounds create that you could use as embellishments. I just added a white stitched heart to the center along with a sentiment. A lot of people asked about this background die when they saw it in the stores. They asked if I was going to show it in a video, so I wanted to be able to make sure to share it with you today. Now, one of the things I'm trying to do in the new year is make matching envelopes every time I do a card. So for all of these cards today, I used a Write at Home stamp set to stamp the sentiment that says, "Quite possibly the happiest mail you'll receive today." I white heat embossed that on all the matching envelopes to the cards, and so now they're ready to go and send out in the mail. Okay, I hope you liked today's cards and tips and tricks. If you're interested in the products that I talk about, they're linked below in my YouTube description. You can go to my blog for much more information and to get links to the challenge blog that I talked about earlier. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a great new year, and we'll see you soon.